Hey, good morning, Barry Wilson at Wilson Auto Repair. Going to do a little bit of an electrical seminar here to help some of you guys out there that don't quite understand how the starter relates to your key up on the dash and how all that electricity goes through your car and makes things work. So I'm going to kind of help you simplify the starter ignition circuit here. So if you have a problem and you don't really know what to do, you might be able to use some of this in this seminar here or this video to help you figure out your problem. So we always have to start with the car when you're talking electrical with the battery. So let's go over here and look at the battery for a minute on this car. And on this, right here's the battery, and it's normally in the same location on a Mustang, or most cars. It's up in front under the hood. It'll have two battery cables on it. One of them is going to be the negative and one of them is going to be the positive. And on the battery there'll be a plus for the positive and a minus for the negative. Now, the negative right here is always attached to the ground part of the car. In other words, it doesn't do anything other than go to some part of the motor and make a connection right there. It also grounds at the body and some other places, but it doesn't have any interaction with any of the rest of the wiring that you might add when you're working on the car. So here's our battery. We'll make sure your battery has a hold down so that it's tight in here and it doesn't go anywhere, because I see a lot of cars that have batteries that are loose and you could stop real quick and flip that thing over in here and have a problem. Batteries can explode. They've got acid in them. They've protected them pretty well now these days compared to they were when I was growing up. So you want to be careful with a battery. Of course, no flames around it. It doesn't really gas anymore, but they can gas, and that gas can blow up. So now the battery right here is going to connect to over here to do some work. So that's what we're going to start right here, and we're going to talk about how this electricity coming out of the battery will make that starter work. So let's go back over to the table for just a second and talk about parts. So here's a battery cable that would have come off the battery, and it's going to go to this component right here. This is called a starter solenoid. This is actually a relay, but it actually does two things. And the first thing we're going to talk about is that it transmits electrical power to your starter. So it would come off of this side right here, where that's bolted on, and would go over to the back of the starter right there. Now, how do we get electricity from the battery to there? Well, first of all, this is going to connect on this side to the battery and on this side to the starter. Now, what's going to make that work? Well, there are two studs right here that you have wires that hook into it. Let's go over and look at those right quick. Now here's this starter solenoid on the car, and you can see the battery cable hooks up over here, and this side goes down to the starter. Then there are two wires that connect right here and right here. This one is the one that activates this relay. And what it does, when you apply electricity right here, it connects this to this. So one way you can check that is you can check to see with your test light if you have power right here. Try to start your car and see if there's power right over here with your test light. If there's no power here, that means either this is defective or you're not getting any power out of into this wire right here. It pulls off real simply like this. Put your test light in the end of that, put it on the ground side, have somebody turn the key and see if this lights up. If it does, then we know that part of it's good. And if it still doesn't start, then probably the solenoid is bad. I usually try to use a motor craft because they seem like they don't fail like some of the other aftermarket starter solenoids that are out there on the market. So now here we've gone. We've come from the battery, down the battery cable, to the solenoid on this side, out of the solenoid down to the starter, and we know that there's a wire that comes right here that's going to make this solenoid work. We're going to talk about this one in a minute. Let's go back here and look at the desk again. So how does this wire get hot? Well, it actually gets hot. This is an ignition switch. So here's your keys. They go in here like this, and as you turn your key to try to start it, you'll remember that you go to a part where it clicks to run, and then you push it a little bit further and it tries to start. When you're in that start position, then the ignition switch right here, which is the power, is going to send some power out of the wire that connects to right here, and it's going to go through this switch. And this switch is on your transmission. This is called a start neutral switch, and this switch right here prevents you from starting your car in drive. So it'll only allow you to start it in park. If it's in park, then it's going to send power on through on this blue and red wire in and out and back over to right here. So let's go over that one more time. Here's the blue and red wire right here. So if we were to connect this like this, it would actually come out of here once you try to start it. And it's going to go over and connect with a connector to this one. Go in. If it's in park, it's going to come out. When it comes out, it's going to go to right here. And that's going to make your starter work. So I hope that's helpful in understanding that. Now let's talk about this part of it. This is the part that activates when you're starting the car, when you have it in the start position. And this is what sends power to the coil. And I have lots of people lots of things that I see on groups and other forums where people don't understand why their car won't start. It'll run okay, but when you go to the start position, it won't start. The reason for that is that when you twist the key on an older Mustang, the power to your ignition coil on this positive side goes dead. So there's no power coming out of the ignition switch to the coil. If you don't have any power going to the coil, you have no spark and the car is not going to start. So the way Ford did that was they devised this terminal right here so that when this solenoid activates, it sends power out right here, and it's designed to go back to the coil. So the way that all works is this red and green wire right here. It's hot, meaning that it's got electricity on it when you just have the key turned on. It goes dead when you have the key turned off, but it's connected to here and to here, so that you just kind of, it's a circle. This goes over, that connects to this wire, so here's how that would look. It goes from here to here, and this wire is connected in with it. So we're all connected together here. When you go to the start position, we get power out of here. We go to the run position, we get power out of here. And this wire going back to the coil is always going to be hot in either one of those two positions. If your car won't start, you need to double check to make sure you turn your key on and see if there's power at the coil. If there's power at the coil, then go to the start position and check to see if there's power at the coil. If there's no power at the coil, come to see, then we're not getting power out of this right here, and we need to follow that wire back around to figure out why we're not getting power back up to the coil. Now, these old wiring diagrams are not very well written. They are really difficult for somebody that's new to learn how to read because they're just not continuous. A lot of this stuff I kind of know by memory, but I don't need to refer back to this, but you might want to buy one of these and start practicing reading. Pick out something that's really easy. And on this particular one, you see, I've made a lot of notes, but you'll find a wire here that has a number on it. You go over to this little box and you find that number, and it'll tell you what color that wire is. And then you can kind of follow it through your car and see if it actually ends up going where it should. And that'll help you get acquainted. This is something you need to learn how to do. It's really not that hard. I have more trouble trying to figure out how to make my computer work with a spreadsheet than I do reading this, so it shows you how old I am. But if you're younger or you just want to spend some time, just spend some time looking at this, and it'll be very, very, very helpful to you. You can see this is the ignition starting charging, and that's what all this is about right here. And it kind of shows where all those wires are laid out, where they go, what they attach to, and how they should work. The last thing you want to know about an ignition switch on one of these, when you look at an ignition switch on a later model, when there's multiple wires coming out of this, these two have to do with one for starting it and one to keep the coil hot. This one gets power in from the battery, and then when you're in the run position, this stud right here, this metal stud, also has power on it with a nut, and anything else that needs power, they attach that wire right here. Example, anything that would need to have key on power, windshield wipers, air conditioning, anything that is not hot when the key is off, like headlights are hot with the key off. So this is one that if you got key on power, it's going to come out of here. Now, one thing I want to remind you of is that these old switches and the way these cars were set up, they didn't really have a lot of capability to send a whole lot of power out, and you'll burn this ignition switch up if you start attaching too many things to that. So I'm going to do a video on how to get by that with a relay, and I'll post that on YouTube so you can watch it. But you do need to know that this is not a wire that you want to hook a lot of stuff up to, or it's going to really cause a problem. I'm Barry Wilson with Wilson Auto Repair. If you got questions, go to my website, wilsonauto.com. Call me if you'd like. Go to my YouTube channel. I've got a lot of stuff on there that might be helpful and help you fix your car.